In the flash of an eye, the world's oil supply was reduced by 5%. The world needs more oil, but the Green New Deal Dems say no. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about the Saudi oil shock. There was the attack on September 14th. Where about 5% of the world's oil supply and about 50% of Saudi Arabia's oil production capacity was cut by drone and cruise missile attacks. It's going to be several weeks, probably by the end of September, everything should be back up and running the way it was. And in the meantime, Saudi Arabia is supplying markets from its reserves. President Donald Trump has also authorized the release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve after the attacks in Saudi Arabia. And you saw some immediate action on prices. It went from about $55 a barrel up to about $63 a barrel. Things have settled back down. It's a little bit below $59 a barrel. That's still elevated prices, though, and that's not unsurprising when 5% of the world's oil supply is disrupted. You're going to see some markets react to that, and they're going to price it in. Other factors might have oil prices higher, the peak dollar and potential weakening of the dollar coming as the Federal Reserve is cutting interest rates. And that can also put upward pressure on prices. And now Houthi rebels from Yemen have claimed credit for the attacks. But the U.S. has pointed the finger at Iran. Wherever the blame lies, obviously, this is going to have a short-term to medium-term impact upon prices. Long-term, President Donald Trump is running for re-election in 2020, and his opponents on the Democratic side actually want to get rid of oil. They've declared war on oil. Iran's obviously fighting a war on oil, Western oil, certainly. And Democrats want to get rid of hydraulic fracturing. Elizabeth Warren says that she would do fracking ban. The rest of the candidates, every one of them, wants to get rid of offshore drilling. The House of Representatives, led by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, they've passed two bills blocking oil and gas drilling off of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Florida Gulf coasts. Republicans in the Senate aren't doing much with that, but then there's Joe Biden. He says he wants to get rid of fossil fuels altogether. Former Vice President Joe Biden's proclamation that fossil fuels will have no place in his administration during Wednesday night's debate was a far cry from his 2020 declaration. CNN's Dana Bash asked if there was any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in this administration. And Biden replied, no, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for any fossil fuel. He responded. So this is the Green New Deal Dems. They don't want any carbon emissions within 10 years. So that means they have to get rid of the internal combustion engine. That means that they want to get rid of oil production in the United States, but crude oil production in the United States has been increasing markedly because of shale oil production. This actually makes the United States far more equipped to deal with supply disruptions. We're producing about 12.4 million barrels a day of oil, and a good chunk of that increase is coming from shale. It used to be down to like 5 million barrels a day in the mid-2000s during the Obama administration. Towards the end, it started to pick up. We got closer to 10 million, and this is all shale. This increase from 5 million to 12 million, that's shale oil production. But Democrats are saying we don't want shale oil production. They want to ban fracking, and they don't want offshore drilling. In short, they would be perfectly okay with the Saudi oil shock, I guess, sending prices to the moon. We've seen that before, where prices went up to over $100 a barrel in 2008 as a result of the increased demand in China that occurred throughout the 2000s. China was rapidly industrializing, and then there was an increase in demand, and shale oil had not fully gotten off the ground yet. And then again, after the financial crisis, oil again approached $100 a barrel, all the way until 2014, when there was a slowdown in China and a slowdown in global demand and a slowdown in the global economy. that finally ended in 2016. And has picked up since President Trump won re-election. And you can see that when the price of oil is a little bit higher, the economic activity, the economy's running a little bit hotter. And now we're seeing again prices start to tick up. And there could be you could see another price spike as the oil wars continue in the Middle East. If Iran's going to be shooting missiles at Saudi Arabian oil capacity, I think that $58 a barrel right now, that could be low compared to what it could be. Now, in the 1970s, there was the Arab oil embargo, and this is when they stopped selling oil to the West, and prices went up to like $40 a barrel. That was a lot of money back in the 1970s. By the end of the 1970s, and then prices began to come back down after the great inflation subsided. But I think back then there was not this concern about attempting to undermine U.S. oil supplies. Back then we spoke of energy independence and a need to get more capacity to drill more. And I think the Arab oil embargo did encourage other countries around the world to drill. Nowadays, the largest oil suppliers in the world are the U.S., Russia, and Saudi Arabia. We're the three biggest. The other countries, Canada's up there too as a major oil supplier. But you need this additional capacity. This is why we're able to shrug off an attack by Iran on Saudi Arabian oil production capacity. So with about half of Saudi Arabia's processing capacity in flames, about 5% of global production, U.S. share of global supplies suddenly just became that much more essential. Just a mere 5% disruption, even if temporary, will be enough to have an impact on prices for weeks and months ahead. Again, it's not up at $63, but it's still elevated, and it's almost a week later now. And I think that you could see that continue. Americans for Limited Government President Rick Manning blasted Democrats' plans, especially in light of the attacks on the Saudi oil facilities, in a statement saying, "The attack on the Saudi oil fields demonstrates to Americans who are too young to remember the 1973 oil embargoes just how delicate the supply lines of oil are in the Middle East. While much of the world's energy supply may have been thrown into turmoil as a result of these attacks with higher prices, the United States stands as a nation prepared to meet these energy challenges and higher demand due to energy independence achieved under President Donald Trump. Hydraulic fracturing is the reason why America is a part of the solution to this energy supply attack, and Senator Elizabeth Warren's dangerous promise to end fracking, and all Democrat candidates who want to end offshore drilling can now be seen for the foolish pandering they represent. While Warren pretends to be a serious candidate for president, no one who would put America at the mercy of Middle East oil supplies can ever again be trusted in the White House." So global markets are not just a light switch that environmental activists can swoop in and just shut off as much as they would like to without dramatic, sometimes catastrophic consequences ensuing, including on prices. I think we've seen this movie before, and we don't want to watch it again. We don't want to pay $5, $6 a gallon for gasoline. Environmental radicals look at the same set of circumstances that level-headed people look at, who say that as the world's leading oil producer, we should be producing more because we have a responsibility to satisfy markets when we have such abundant supplies. And we're doing that right now. And so the oil prices aren't going to go to the moon as long as President Trump is in charge, because he's going to make certain that we're not kneecapping our offshore drilling capacity and our shale fracking capacity. And I'll leave you with the close here. The lesson here, the real lesson, is that the U.S. needs to be prepared for supply disruptions. We need redundancy. Oil shale production and supporting offshore drilling accomplishes that, but Democrats are now broadcasting that that can all change with just one election. And again, Joe Biden, he wants to get rid of fossil fuels. He doesn't love fossil fuels. He wants to get rid of oil. Democrats want to get rid of offshore drilling. Elizabeth Warren wants to get rid of fracking. In the meantime, President Trump, he's going to do more shale. He wants to do more offshore, and I think that's going to advantage the United States. as Saudi Arabia has a supply disruption, that means we can export more oil, and we can grow the U.S. economy that way. We should be increasing our production. So that's the lesson. But Democrats' response is to supply disruptions will be to make them worse, no matter how bad it is for the economy. And that's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.